Welcome back to Adobe Lightroom Classic. And today we're going to be taking a look at two different things. First, we're going to look how to sync settings from one photo to another. And then we're going to take a look at the export function within the program. All right, so you will notice down here on the bottom right-hand corner, notice that I have two very similar images. And since both of them were shot almost consecutively, what we're going to be doing to one is most likely what we're going to be doing to the other. And in this case, it will allow us to sync settings so that we don't have to tone them individually. So there's two main different ways to do that. One is up here. Notice that we are in the library module. And I tend to do this when I'm exporting for a client gallery. Like think of this as a series of portraits. I'm not going to individually tone each one, but if I need to make an adjustment, it's really easy to make a minor adjustment and then apply it to everything. You'll notice that when you're in the library module, over here we actually have something called Quick Develop Settings. And these are settings that are usually available right here in the Develop module, but these are applicable to our thumbnails and our preview images here before we get into the Develop module. So let's say I wanted to change the color balance. I could come in here and go to Auto and switch that. And if I wanted to manually warm it up, I can click on this. It's going to make it cooler. This is going to make it warmer, or this is going to make it much cooler, and this is going to make it much warmer. Think of this as going in increments of 1, and maybe think of this as going in increments of 5. So it's getting you a much larger adjustment. So if I was to click this, you're most likely not going to see anything. But if I click this, it's going to make a larger adjustment, and you can see how much cooler that image got. So I'm going to hit Command Z just to undo that, and we're going to go ahead and leave it there. So if I wanted to apply the shadows, I could click on the shadows. I can open that up. And then what happens is instead of just applying everything to this image, I can make sure that both of these images are selected. And in this case, they are. So I'm going to hit that and I'm going to select this image. And then I can come over here and I can say Sync Settings. And what that's going to do is bring up this Synchronize Settings window. And right now, I basically have almost everything selected except for masking. So this means that any adjustment basically that I made to the image is going to be synced. If I did not want color grading to be synced, I could select that. So if I had color grading on one but not the other, we could do that. So you can kind of turn on and off everything. In general, when I'm working in this location, I have everything selected. So in this case, I can just simply hit check all. And then I can hit synchronize. And just like that, it's going to apply these settings to this image and I'm done. Then I would most likely go up and export. Now you can also go to the Develop module. So in this case, we'll go ahead and select this image first. We'll go to the Develop module and we can apply some adjustments. And the one thing that you're going to notice when I do this is one's a horizontal image and one is a vertical image. When I'm doing these sync settings, I'm usually only doing these global adjustments. I'm not using selective mask because it kind of screws everything up. So I'm trying to just do basic settings. So what we will do here is we'll come over and we'll just kind of cool this image up. We will lower the contrast a little bit. We'll really open the shadows just so you can see that. And that's all that we're going to do right here in the basic panel. And then we can kind of scroll down and let's say I don't like this pinkish color. I can come over here and I can go into the red and I can adjust that hue to change the color of the hue a little bit. And let's say that I want to come down here and add a little bit of a vignette. Come over here, we'll add a little vignette to that image. And there we're pretty good. So then I'm going to select this second image and you could do this to 1 or 100. It doesn't matter how many. And then we can come on over here to sync. And then once again, synchronize settings. I've got everything checked. I'll hit synchronize and it will apply what it did to here to this image. And that's basically how it goes. Now you can copy and paste settings if that's something that you want to do. Those are all available up here on the edit menu. So I could hit copy and then I would copy the settings. And then if I went up here to edit paste, you can see it's going to allow me It's basically doing the same thing. It's just called a sync button versus going through the process manually. So that's how you sync settings from one image to another. Now, let's say our next step is that we want to export these images to put them on some sort of a web gallery, something for clients to look at. So we're going to come on up here to our file menu and we're going to drop down here to export first. We want to use export. If you're finding the information in any of these videos helpful, if you could please give me a thumbs up, that would be wonderful. If you would like to subscribe and get future videos as they come up, because I'm going to be doing a whole series on Lightroom right here, that would be great as well, because this is going to be where you're going to set everything up. Now I'm going to close JPEG Mini. Is not something that most people are going to have available. This is a plugin. You can see I've added it here. This is something that I use. JPEG Mini is a compression program that reduces your file size for JPEG images. Up here, you'll notice I've got some presets that I've created so that I don't have to go through this whole process. But let's go ahead and take a look at what's available under export. Now, remember, if you're working with a raw file and you make an adjustment, there's no saving. You don't need to do that. It automatically saves that to the XMP file and you're good to go. But if you want to export, meaning to send this out, maybe to get printed or to upload to Facebook or some other social media or email this to a client, this is the location where that's going to take place. Our first option is export location. Where in the world do we want the photo to go? Do we want it to go to a specific folder? Do we want it to go to the same folder as the original photo? In my case, I usually have my images in a folder. In my case, if you remember, we created a folder for the images to go in during import. So that means that these photos are going to go back into that same photo. That's what I would choose. But you could choose anything that you want to up here. I usually use same folder as original photo. However, I create a new subfolder inside of that folder to put stuff. So in this case, this one's called homework. I could call this toned. I could call it the client's name, anything that I want to do. You can also add these exports to your catalog by clicking this box. In this case, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to uncheck it. I can rename the file if I would like to rename it by selecting this box. Over here, we have a variety of different ways to rename. So if I wanted to add a custom name, I could add that custom name there. It would rename everything. In this case, I'm not going to rename my files. This is for your video settings. In this case, we're not using video, so we'll close that. Here are your file settings. We have the options to save this as a JPEG, a PSD, a TIFF, a PNG, a DNG, and the original file. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and output this as a JPEG. I'm going to have the image quality at 100, but I think by default it's at 60. I always slide this up to 100. I'm going to use the color space of sRGB because we're going to assume this is going to the web, but you can choose whichever one you want. I almost always, when using image sizing, and obviously if you turn it off, it will export that image at its original size. But in this case, we want to reduce it. So we've got long edge, and this is usually what I'm meaning if it's a panoramic image where it's horizontal, it's going to make your width the long edge. And if it's a portrait image, it's going to make your height the long edge. But you can do this by width and height, dimension, a whole bunch of other options. In my case, I almost always use long edge. We'll make this one 1500 pixels, which is a good size for uploading for a client gallery. Resolution does not matter in this case because we're sizing by pixels. You have a choice for output sharpening. I'm going to sharpen for the screen because this is how it's going to be viewed, but we've got matte paper, glossy paper, and screen. Obviously, these are going to give more sharpening than screen is. And then we have low, standard, and high. And inside of Lightroom, this is my favorite thing about the program. I love its batch exporting function. I use it all the time. Next, down here, we have metadata. So how do we want our metadata to be saved? In my case, I want to include all the metadata. I don't want anything removed. A watermark. So do we want to add a watermark? And I'll go ahead and open this up. You can see I've got a simple one, but I've also got a custom one that I've made. And if you wanted to change that or create a new one, you could easily just go edit watermarks and a new window would come up and you can see, you can pick the location, whether it's a graphic, a text, anything that you want, its size, all that is adjustable here. And this is just stuff that you should go ahead and play around with. In my case, it's just going to use a graphic that I've imported. I'm going to hit cancel. It's automatically going to add my watermark. Post-processing. So what do you want to do after the export? Do nothing. But we could show it in the Finder, open it in Photoshop, anything that you would want to do. You can choose the application that would be associated with this here. Once you have all this set up, if this is something that you're going to use over and over again, you can come on over here and add. And you can see right here, I've got web, 1500 pixels, which is what we just did. No watermark and with watermark. So I've got two different options. You would simply just hit add, give it a name, and it would appear over here next time. So I'm going to hit cancel, and that's it for your settings. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and disable the watermark because I have removed it from its location and it won't be able to find it. So we're going to come down here and we're going to go ahead and hit export, and you can see it should run through the process. It's exporting those two files to the same folder. It's going to name them. Once everything is set up, what I can do now is come up here and go to File. I can totally skip the export. I can go Export with Previous, which is what I just created, and it would do it automatically. Or I could manually pick one of my options. And in my case, I could pick No Watermark, click that. It's going to go through the export function that's associated with that preset, and you're done. So it's kind of like a once and done setup, and you're good to go. It makes it really easy. And in this case, I exported both of these images, not just one. The one thing I'll tell you is if you're not good with computers, make sure you understand where you're saving your image to, or you're going to be hunting around and looking for it forever. Well, that's it for this video. I will see you guys at the next one. We do have a Facebook group, and there's a very specific reason I created this. If you want the information, it's in the description below. But a lot of comments I get, people are asking me questions and I cannot help them because I need to see what the issue is. Facebook allows you to either post an image or a video, and it makes it really easy for me to give you the answer to whatever your problem is.